The sun was barely up when I pulled into our driveway, my boots still caked in dust from the site. 12 hours on the graveyard shift, pouring concrete under a failing floodlight while the foreman barked in half sentences, it wears a man down. But I had this thought on the drive home, right around exit 247, I'll bring Jenna her favorite hazelnut latte. Seemed simple, almost silly, but it gave me something to look forward to besides collapsing face first into the mattress. That's what marriage is, I guess, doing the little things even when you're running on fumes. Trying to stay connected in the in-between moments. I'd been doing more of that lately without really realizing it. Bringing her snacks she liked. Sending midday check-in texts. Doing extra grocery runs. I thought it was just being thoughtful. In hindsight, it might have been something else. Instinct. A subconscious trying to hold onto something slipping out of reach. Anyway, that morning, I turned the corner onto our quiet street, and that's when I saw it. Parked right in front of our house was a red Tesla. Not a dusty one like you'd expect around here. No, this one looked fresh out of the showroom, gleaming in the morning light like it didn't belong in our neighborhood. The plates were Texas, sure, but not Austin. I didn't recognize the numbers or the tags. The whole thing looked unfamiliar. Unsettling. At first, I thought maybe Jenna's brother had come to town. She mentioned he might visit. But he drives a pickup. And he always texts me about borrowing the driveway, never parks on the curb. I pulled in slowly, the weight of the truck dipping into our driveway like usual, but my mind was stuck on that damn Tesla. Something about it rubbed me the wrong way, too clean, too intentional, too convenient. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute longer than usual. The latte's warmth had already faded through the cardboard cup, seeping into my calloused fingers. For a second, I almost turned the engine back on. Just kept driving. But I told myself I was being ridiculous. Paranoid. So I led the engine, grabbed the latte, and headed toward the front door. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that's almost too perfect. Not the lived-in silence of a morning routine, but the stillness of a place waiting to be caught. Inside, the air smelled like roasted coffee, but not our usual kind. This was stronger, darker. Something bolder. I followed the scent to the kitchen. On the stovetop was a French press, sleek, modern, not the old Mr. Coffee machine we used. I don't remember buying that press. I sure as hell never used it. Next to it, an open bag of beans from some niche boutique roaster, name I'd never heard of, in packaging that looked like it belonged in a luxury gift basket. I stood there for a moment, just staring at it. Jenna and I always bought our coffee in bulk from the grocery store. Medium roast Guatemalan. Cheap, reliable, nothing fancy. This was something different. Something curated. I called out her name once. No answer. But I heard faint movement upstairs. Nothing dramatic, just a shuffle like someone easing quietly across the hardwood. The bed, when I peeked in, was made. Not just thrown together, but actually made, tight corners, smooth sheets, pillows fluffed. That's not how we live. Jenna usually leaves it messy in the morning. Says she likes to air it out before she makes it. This was hotel-level neat. My heart was beating faster now, and I hadn't even done anything yet. Just observed. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. Like I'd walked into a model house made to look like our life, only off. Then I noticed the door to the bathroom was half open, steam still clinging to the mirror. She must have just showered. I stepped in, intending to drop my jacket on the hook like always, and then I saw it. On the edge of the sink sat an electric toothbrush. Not one of ours. This one was all black, top-tier model with a pressure sensor light ring and a wireless charging base. The kind you see in those flashy Instagram ads. Not something Jenna or I would ever buy. She uses a basic manual toothbrush, pink handle, soft bristles. I used the one my dentist gave me, battery-powered, barely holds a charge. But this one was new. Fresh. Like it had been used just this morning. I stared at it longer than I should have, like it might explain itself if I looked hard enough. I checked the drawers, nothing else seemed out of place. Still, that toothbrush was the tipping point. A line crossed. Jenna came downstairs a minute later, hair still damp, wrapped in that pale blue robe she always wears on Sundays. She didn't seem startled to see me, just raised her eyebrows a little. "You're home early," she said, her voice light, a smile on her face. "Long night?" I held up the latte, forcing a tired grin. "Figured I'd surprise you." She took the cup, sipped it, thanked me like everything was normal. I didn't beat around the bush. "Whose car is that outside?" I asked. She blinked, then glanced toward the window. "Oh, that's Darren's. A coworker. He left it here yesterday. We were working on a report together and he stayed at my brother's place. Easier to carpool from here this morning." I nodded slowly. "And the toothbrush?" She didn't flinch. "His. He forgot it." Was brushing before he left. He's kind of obsessive about dental stuff. Then she laughed softly like that explained everything. And maybe it did. To someone else. But not to me. Because something in her tone was too easy. Too smooth. She didn't stumble, didn't hesitate, didn't look away. She gave me the full explanation before I even asked the second question. That's not how people answer when they're caught off guard. That's how they answer when they've already prepared the story. I didn't accuse her of anything. Didn't raise my voice. Just stood there, letting her words hang between us. She turned away, back to the kitchen, humming as she poured herself a second cup of coffee from that fancy French press. I didn't follow her right away. I stayed in the hallway, staring at the staircase, wondering how many steps I'd missed on the way up to this moment. That's the thing about suspicion, it doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps. It whispers. It gathers evidence in the quiet. You start seeing things that were always there but never meant anything until suddenly they do. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, but I knew something had changed in our house. Something small but fundamental. A toothbrush left behind. A car parked too perfectly. A bed made like it was trying to cover something up. And Jenna, sweet, smart, always 3 steps ahead Jenna, was acting like none of it mattered. Like she'd already chosen what story to live in. And I wasn't part of the narration anymore. I didn't know it yet, but that morning, the latte, the car, the toothbrush, it was the first crack in the dam. The first breath of water against the walls. Everything after this would come in waves. After that morning, something changed in me. I didn't say anything else about the toothbrush or the Tesla, not even when Jenna made an offhand comment later that week about Darren's forgetfulness. I just nodded. I played along. But inside, I was pulling away, quietly, deliberately, like a man easing his hand out of a fire he hadn't realized was burning him. The worst part was, I couldn't even tell you when it started. That's the thing with betrayal, it doesn't hit all at once like in the movies. It comes in fragments, little shifts you ignore until the whole floor gives out beneath you. Jenna had been changing for months, maybe longer. I'd just been too damn tired or too willing to trust her to put the pieces together. But now? Now the pieces were all I saw. Her phone used to live on the kitchen counter while we made dinner, charging, playing music, getting greasy fingerprints like the rest of our lives. Now it was glued to her hand. Always face down. Always on silent. If I walked in while she was mid-text, she'd press the screen off without finishing. Not angrily. Just efficiently. Like she was hiding a trade secret. I used to know her lock screen passcode. We shared everything, Netflix, emails, even calendar alerts. One day, out of nowhere, she set her phone to Face ID only. Said it was because of some security article she read. Then came 2-factor authentication on our shared Dropbox. Work protocols, she claimed. Company policy. Funny how company policy didn't exist until I stopped being able to see what she was saving. She started using AirPods for everything. Even quick phone calls while folding laundry. Once, I caught her on a call as I walked in the door. She was standing in the hallway, one hand on her hip, whispering and laughing. When she noticed me, she flinched. I couldn't hear who was on the other end. She said it was her friend Allie from work. But when I mentioned it later, casually, she said it was a client. Small lie? Maybe. But it stuck with me. She started dressing up more. Don't get me wrong, Jenna always took care of herself. But this was different. High heels in the middle of the week. New blouses I'd never seen, tags still dangling. Perfume I didn't recognize. I asked once if she had a big presentation or something. She said no, just trying to feel good again. The more I asked, the less she told me. Conversations turned thin. She stopped asking about my work. I'd come home talking about foundation shifts or the idiot foreman and she'd nod vaguely, already scrolling through something on her phone. Dinner became quieter. She stopped cooking with me and we started eating at different times. She claimed she was watching her diet, needed lighter meals. But sometimes I'd hear the microwave beep at midnight when she thought I was asleep. I'd find late-night Uber Eats charges on our account, places I didn't even know delivered that late. She said she was jogging more to clear her head. But I'd see her come back with perfect eyeliner, cheeks just a little too pink. Not sweaty, airbrushed. Like she'd just stepped out of a dressing room, not a run. One night, I walked out to throw away some trash and saw her returning from her jog in heels. She laughed it off, said she stopped at Allie's apartment for a wine break. Just being bad, she teased. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure, controlling husband. That's how it works, right? You don't want to look crazy. So you silence your gut. You give her the benefit of the doubt even when the doubt starts suffocating you. One night, we were watching TV, something dumb on Netflix neither of us cared about. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then put its screen down again. I didn't say anything, but she looked at me like she could feel me noticing. Just work, she said, before I could ask. Her smile was tight. Off. Like it cost her something to hold it. I pretended to believe her. We sat there in silence, watching a show we'd already watched before, pretending to still be a team. But the space between us on the couch felt like a canyon. The tipping point came 2 weeks after the toothbrush. She told me she had a weekend work seminar in Houston. Left early Friday morning. Took a roller bag and said she'd be back Sunday evening. I kissed her goodbye at the door, told her to drive safe. She smiled, thanked me, said I was sweet for remembering her coffee order lately. That Saturday, I got a text from her around noon. A selfie in front of what looked like a hotel conference room, whiteboard in the background, name tag on her lanyard. Her caption, so exciting, right? Face with rolling eyes. But the photo had been taken with the front-facing camera. I could see the screen reflected in her sunglasses hanging on her shirt. She wasn't alone. A man was next to her, just off to the side. Tall, wearing a blazer. Smiling. I stared at the image for a full minute before I realized what I was really looking at. I zoomed in until the image blurred. And there it was, his hand. On her chair. Too close. Too familiar. I didn't respond. I just sat on the edge of the bed and let it sink in. The toothbrush. The Tesla. The coffee. The gym makeup. The change in her password. The late-night wine runs. The quiet. This wasn't about one guy. This wasn't even about a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. A whole new world she had built around herself, and I wasn't in it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Not proof for her, proof for me. Proof that I wasn't going crazy. That the version of her I'd started to suspect was real, not some jealous hallucination. I started reading articles on emotional cheating, watched videos late at night about how to spot signs of infidelity. I learned that people don't just fall into affairs, they build a scaffolding for them. They construct whole new routines. And the person being cheated on? They're always the last to know. Not because they're stupid, but because they trusted. I hated that I still loved her. That I still hoped she was telling the truth. That some part of me still wished she'd come home from Houston with a souvenir mug and a lame story about bad buffet food. Instead, she came home Sunday night smelling like a cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked about the seminar, she gave me bullet points, like reading from a script. I asked if anyone from her team went with her. She said no. Just her. I asked if she made any new contacts. She said the whole thing was boring. Then she asked if I'd refilled the Brita pitcher while she was gone. That was it. I said nothing. Just watched her walk past me with that same casual confidence. Like she didn't even know she'd walked out of our life weeks ago. Like she hadn't left a trail of breadcrumbs behind her and thought I wasn't the kind of man who'd follow. By the 3rd week, I stopped asking questions. Not because I had answers, but because I was done collecting lies. I started listening more than I spoke. Watching. Noticing. I became the quiet version of myself, the one I hadn't known existed until I realized I was no longer part of my own marriage. When Jenna left in the mornings, I stayed in bed longer, eyes open, mind racing. She used to kiss me goodbye even if I was half asleep. Now she tiptoed out. That subtle shift? It wasn't kindness. It was avoidance. A small kindness would have been honesty. Instead, I got silence. One morning, she forgot her lunch. I opened the fridge to grab it for her and caught sight of a neatly packed Tupperware labeled J. My first thought was, when did she start labeling her own food? I didn't say anything. But that same day, I stopped by the hardware store on the way home and picked up a set of smart home gadgets. That was the excuse anyway. The truth was I needed to know. Not what she was telling me, what was actually happening. My instincts were screaming, and I was done silencing them. I installed a discrete camera in the entryway, another in the living room, one above the kitchen cabinets, tucked behind a plant. They weren't obvious. I wasn't trying to catch someone like a TV show. I just wanted to stop gaslighting myself. I needed footage to answer the question that had kept me up every night since the toothbrush. I justified it to myself as home security. Jenna didn't question it. I even made a show of acting excited about our energy efficiency upgrades. She smiled politely and nodded like she always did when she wasn't really listening. By day 3, I was already half expecting what I eventually saw. It was a Thursday just after noon. I was on my lunch break, sitting in the cab of the truck. The security app pinged me with a motion alert at the front door. I opened the live feed out of habit. Nothing unusual at first. Just Jenna coming home earlier than usual, wearing one of her newer dresses, hair tied back, phone in hand. Then he followed. The man in the blazer. I recognized him. He'd been in the background of her conference photo, the one she texted me like it was some joke. Same height, same posture. He stepped through our front door like he belonged. No hesitation. No looking around like he was nervous about being seen. That told me everything I needed to know. They stood in the entryway talking quietly. She leaned against the wall, smiling. He stepped in closer. She touched his chest gently. His hands found her waist. They kissed. Not a nervous, impulsive kiss. Not something sneaky. It was casual. Familiar. Practiced. I watched it happen in silence. My lunch sat untouched beside me. The sandwich Jenna packed the night before, one of her guilt rituals, probably. I didn't even look at it. My stomach was in my throat. But I didn't feel rage. That's what surprised me. No yelling. No fist through the dashboard. No tears. Just stillness. Like watching a car wreck happen in slow motion, only you're in the car and somehow you're also watching from the outside. I let the footage run for another few minutes. He took off his coat. She handed him a glass of something. They disappeared from the frame, heading upstairs. The camera in the living room captured their shadows on the wall as they passed. I locked my phone and stared out the windshield. The job site buzzed in the distance. Trucks reversing. Radios blaring. But all I could hear was the hum in my ears. That low, mechanical tone your brain makes when your heart stops trying to understand something. That night, I came home like nothing happened. I didn't ask questions. I didn't mention lunch. I let her talk about her busy day and how tired she was. I nodded. I made dinner. We watched TV. She fell asleep on the couch, her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. Not out of affection. Just disbelief. I kept telling myself, you know now, you have proof. You're not crazy. But knowing didn't feel like closure. Felt like something worse. Something permanent. A truth you couldn't unlearn, sitting in your bloodstream like a toxin. Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home. I stopped reacting. Stopped hoping. I stopped checking the footage, too. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I already knew enough. The rest didn't matter. It was no longer about who. It was about when. And how long. She came home late again that Friday. Said traffic was bad on I-35. I didn't respond. Just handed her the plate I'd kept warm. She looked surprised. You didn't eat without me? No, I said. Didn't feel like it. She smiled like that meant something sweet. Like I was being romantic. I wanted to laugh. But there was nothing funny left. I spent that weekend planning. Not revenge, just reality. I made a spreadsheet of everything in the house that was hers and everything that was mine. I backed up old files from the shared laptop. I changed the passwords on my personal accounts. Quietly, thoughtfully. No drama. She didn't notice. That Sunday, she was in the backyard, watering the potted plants she always forgot about during the week. I watched from the kitchen window, wondering how long it had been since she saw me. I mean, really saw me. The man who painted that fence last summer in 100-degree heat while she sat inside watching true crime. The man who fixed her car battery last winter when she forgot to turn the lights off. The man she used to write little sticky notes for with hearts and dumb puns. I couldn't remember the last time she touched me without guilt. The last time she looked me in the eyes and didn't flinch. That night, I opened the camera footage again. I watched 3 more visits. Different days. Same man. Same routine. I logged them. Timestamps. Entry times. Departure. Nothing angry. Just facts. A digital diary of what my life had become. A loop of pretending. She asked me that night if I wanted to plan something for our anniversary next month. Our what? Our anniversary, she said, smiling. I looked at her and saw a stranger wearing Jenna's face. A woman who was building 2 lives. One on top of the other, and hoping I'd be too tired, too trusting, too married to the memory of us to notice. I smiled back. Sure, I said. Let's talk about it soon. But we both knew we wouldn't. Because deep down, I think she already knew I knew. Not in specifics, but in silence. She could feel it, the weight of it, hanging between us like a question we were both too afraid to say out loud. That was the thing about Jenna. She was smart. Not just book smart. Intuitive. She could sense a shift in temperature from a mile away. And yet, here she was, holding on to the fiction. Acting like we were still playing the same game, even though I'd already folded my cards and left the table. I didn't stop her. I didn't expose her. I didn't scream or throw plates or demand names. Instead, I started making room for absence. I started imagining the house without her things, the calendar without her appointments, the living room without the echo of her voice pretending to love me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the quiet back. The moment I decided not to confront her, something in me settled. Not in a peaceful way. It wasn't closure. It wasn't healing. It was more like surrender. A quiet folding of arms across the chest. Not because I was weak, but because I realized there was nothing to win. No fight to be had. The war had already happened, quietly, invisibly, and I was the only one who noticed the casualties. So I kept playing my part. She'd walk through the front door, keys jingling like always, and I'd ask her how her day went. She'd say, busy, kiss me on the cheek like she used to, and head to the bathroom with her phone. I never asked who she texted. I never asked why she smiled at the screen like it was telling her a private joke I wasn't part of. Instead, I chopped vegetables. I ordered pizza on Fridays. I cleaned the gutters. I took the car in for service and made sure she had enough gas before her so-called conferences. She didn't question it. Why would she? I was still performing, still useful, still dependable. But what she didn't realize was that I'd stopped showing up emotionally. I wasn't with her anymore. I was studying her, memorizing her patterns, her tells, the way she'd pause before answering a basic question, the way she'd look past me in conversation, like scanning the horizon for a different life. Every time she laughed at her phone, I filed it away. Every time she left the house with a second outfit folded in her tote bag, I logged it. Every time she posted a vague Instagram story with a cappuccino and no caption, I recognized the background tiles as a cafe she swore she'd never been to. She thought I didn't notice. But I noticed everything. I noticed when she stopped asking me to pick her up from work events. When she said she'd Uber instead. I noticed when she stopped talking in her sleep. Something she used to do every night. Now, even her subconscious had gone quiet around me. One evening, she came home early. She looked startled to find me in the kitchen. I was baking chicken, flipping through a dog-eared cookbook my mom gave me years ago. "Oh," she said, "I thought you had the late shift." "Nope," I replied, not even looking up. "Took the day off." There was a pause, a flicker of something in her eyes. Panic? Or guilt? She smiled quickly, too quickly. "That's nice." She kissed me and went upstairs. 15 minutes later, she came back down in sweats and no makeup, like she was trying to rewrite her whole day in reverse. I didn't mention the tight dress she'd worn when she walked in, or the scent of someone else's cologne clinging faintly to her scarf. I didn't ask. I just plated her food and handed her a fork. Let her sit at the table like everything was fine. After dinner, she scrolled through her phone while I did the dishes. She told me a story about her coworker Darren, the one she said left the toothbrush. She said he got a promotion. I nodded, rinsed a glass. I remembered how she used to mention Darren like he was annoying. Now she talked about him like he was the only one in her office who understood her. I didn't ask if she'd seen him that day. I didn't need to. The silence became my armor. It protected me from the chaos I used to live in. I stopped waiting for a confession. That wasn't coming. People like Jenna don't confess. They recast. They spin. They make their betrayal sound like a mistake, a misstep, a phase. They never say, "I stopped loving you. I found someone else. I kept you around because it was easier." Instead, they say, "You were distant. You were distracted. I was confused." I wasn't giving her that chance. I wasn't letting her turn my pain into a shared narrative where we both somehow fell short. So I kept quiet. And while I moved through the days like a man going through motions, I was laying the groundwork for my exit. Quietly, precisely, I cleaned out the storage unit, canceled duplicate subscriptions, sold some tools I hadn't used in years, cashed in an old life insurance policy that she didn't even remember we had. I started putting things in motion. Jenna never noticed. She was too busy juggling her two lives, her curated domestic routine and her secret one. Maybe she thought I was the type to blow up, to scream, to throw a scene that she could later point to and say, "See? That's why I left." But I gave her nothing. I even started going to the gym again. Nothing dramatic, just enough to feel like myself. Something shifted in me, not because I wanted to impress anyone, not because I had something to prove, but because I needed to reclaim my body from the numbness, to remind myself I still existed, still took up space in the world. One night, she asked if I wanted to go to a movie. Caught me off guard. We hadn't done that in months. I agreed. She seemed surprised but happy. We sat side by side in the dark, sharing popcorn like strangers trying to remember how they used to talk. Her hand brushed mine once. She didn't hold it. Afterward, she asked, "That was fun, right?" I smiled. "Yeah." But we both knew it wasn't. It wasn't anything. It was filler. An intermission in a play that had already ended. She started making an effort after that. Or maybe it was her way of assuaging guilt. She started leaving me notes again. Little sticky things on the fridge. One said, "Thanks for dinner, you're the best." Another said, "Don't work too hard today, face blowing a kiss." I kept them all. Not because I believed them, but because I knew they'd come in handy. Eventually, I printed out a spreadsheet. I called it Inventory of Evidence. I didn't label it as such, but that's what it was. Dates, times, footage, references. I wasn't collecting it for court. I wasn't even sure if I'd ever use it. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't hallucinated the last 6 months of my life. One night, Jenna came into the kitchen while I was wiping down the counters. "Hey," she said, voice soft. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I turned and looked at her. "I'm fine," I said. That was it. Not "I love you," not "I'm just tired," just "I'm fine." Because she didn't deserve any more pieces of me. Not the comforting lies. Not the gentle reassurances. She had drained me dry, and I had nothing left to give. Later that night, she fell asleep first. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a long time. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, like someone who hadn't broken anything, like someone whose world was still intact. Mine wasn't, but I was getting ready. The next day, I requested time off from work. A whole week. No explanation. Just PTO. I told my boss I'd be unavailable, and he didn't ask questions. I think he saw the look in my eyes. That weekend, Jenna told me she had a conference in Chicago. I told her to have a safe trip. She kissed me on the forehead. "You're amazing," she whispered. I smiled. "So are you." She didn't see the irony. Or maybe she did. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled. Then I stood up, grabbed the packing tape and got to work. The door clicked shut behind her just after 6 a.m. I waited 5 minutes before I moved. I wanted to make sure she was really gone. Jenna had a habit of doubling back for things she forgot. Keys, chargers, lip balm. That journal she claimed to keep for professional development. I listened for footsteps. Silence. Just birds outside and the faint hum of her engine fading into distance. Then I stood. There was no music. No dramatic montage. Just me in sweatpants, still crusted from sleep, standing in a house that had quietly stopped being mine. I didn't cry. Didn't hesitate. I'd done all my grieving in silence already. At night, in the shower, in the cab of the truck with my hands clenched so tight I left crescents in my palms. Now I was working. And when you're working, you don't have room for sentiment. I started in the bedroom. I knew what was hers. Jenna was meticulous with her things. Everything had a system. Earrings lined in velvet trays. Blouses organized by color, season, occasion. Her drawer of conference wear sat right beneath the lacy things I hadn't seen her wear since the first half of last year. I packed her items carefully. Not angrily. Not like I was throwing her out. More like I was separating our lives with the same precision she used to slice an avocado, clean, smooth, efficient. I opened a large moving box and labeled it in Sharpie, Closet, Jenna. Every hanger had a memory, but I didn't dwell. One blouse had a faint stain from a wine tasting we'd gone to when we still touched each other like we meant it. Another was the dress she wore to our anniversary dinner last year, right before she got that urgent call from the office. She was texting under the table that night. I remembered noticing. I remembered ignoring it. The jewelry came next. The silver locket from her grandmother. The thin gold bracelet she said she lost once but I later saw in the guest bathroom. I packed it all. Under the bed were 2 storage bins. One held old notebooks, cards, printed photos, **TS of a version of us that didn't exist anymore. I didn't read any of them. Didn't flip through the love notes or the ticket stubs. I dropped them into a padded envelope and sealed it with tape. Labeled it, Memories. The other bin held things I didn't recognize. A bag from a boutique I'd never heard of. Receipts. A journal not written in her handwriting. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. I just set it on top of the others and closed the lid. The kitchen was easier. Her mugs, the ones with sassy quotes and delicate handles, went into one box. Her fancy glass containers, that French press I hadn't touched since the day I saw her coworker use it, boxed and labeled. I left behind the pots we used together. The cast iron she never learned to clean properly. Some things felt neutral enough to be mine. The office was more clinical. Laptops. Chargers. Files. I copied anything shared to a drive I labeled Archive Jenna. I didn't snoop through her emails. Not this time. The evidence had already been gathered weeks ago. That job was done. I left one flash drive on the kitchen table. It was labeled clearly. Not passive-aggressively. Not dramatically. Just clean block letters, for Jenna. Inside it held everything. Footage. **TS. A folder named Timeline with dates, camera clips, even logs of when she came and went. A few messages I'd printed from our shared iCloud before she changed the password. Nothing embellished. Nothing edited. Just facts. Alongside it was a note. Not angry. Not poetic. It read, Jenna, I didn't want to have this conversation while you were here. You've already written the ending. These are the pieces you left behind. I put them in order. No accusations. No blame. Just the truth. You don't need to call. Sam. I didn't sign it Love Sam. Because that wasn't true anymore. By noon, the boxes were stacked in the living room. For total. I'd emailed a courier service to come pick them up Monday. I gave them her work address. I figured she wouldn't want to come back here. I knew I wouldn't. I opened the hall closet and removed the spare keys, the extra garage remote, even the emergency folder we kept in case of blackouts. All the pieces that tethered us logistically. I changed every passcode. Alarm system. Thermostat. Garage. Front door. The house became mine again, even if I didn't plan to stay much longer. After that, I called a cleaning service. I didn't want her scent lingering on the sheets. I didn't want to smell her hair in the pillowcases or find strands of it stuck to the sink. I wanted the house stripped of her. Not because I hated her, but because love, when it rots, leaves behind mold. It grows in the corners you don't think to check. The last thing I did was walk through the house one final time. I didn't take photos. Didn't document the moment. I just stood in each room, letting the silence settle. The guest room still had an old candle she used when she wanted the house to smell clean but romantic. I blew it out. Packed it. That scent had long since meant something else. Her perfume was gone. Her books. Her mail. But the air still felt heavy. I opened the windows. Let the spring wind in. Let it carry the remains of her out. Then I packed a small duffel, just the essentials. I didn't take much. Some clothes. My laptop. A couple of things from the nightstand drawer that made me feel like myself again. I locked the front door one final time with the code I just changed. And I walked away. No yelling. No dramatic goodbye. No final confrontation. She'd come home to a clean house, for boxes, a flash drive, and a note. An absence. Not the loud, emotional kind. The real kind. The kind that doesn't knock. The kind that doesn't leave crumbs behind. The kind that makes you realize too late what you've lost. I didn't go far. I drove to my cousin Mark's place in Denver. He'd offered months ago, anytime, man, seriously. Doors open. I texted him that morning. He replied in seconds. Said the guest room was made up. Didn't ask questions. On the way there, I stopped for gas and bought myself a coffee. Hazelnut. Just for me this time. And when I took that first sip, it didn't taste like something I used to share. It tasted like something I was finally keeping for myself. Denver was cold, quiet, exactly what I needed. I stayed in Mark's guest room, said little, and existed on autopilot. Jenna texted, called, left voicemails that started calm and turned frantic. I didn't answer. Her messages were full of, I can explain, and it wasn't what it looked like. But it was exactly what it looked like. The footage didn't lie. I didn't block her. I just didn't respond. My silence became my answer. Not revenge. Not cruelty. Just disconnection. She had chosen her path. I had chosen peace. 4 months later, I started a new job in Denver. New city, new rhythm. I was reviewing onboarding files when her name appeared. Jenna Rivers. Same spelling. Different department. I looked up and there she was. Hair darker, eyes tired, smile gone. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and looked away. I felt nothing. No hate, no triumph. Just calm. The storm had passed. She was a ghost in my past. I was someone new. And I didn't need closure. I already had it.